Good Wednesday morning. That's Wednesday. Welcome to our devotional time together. Just a reminder, tonight we'll be doing Bible study at 6, not at 7, but at 6, as I got a Zoom meeting at 7. So I will be tied up at 7 at that. So we will meet at 6, and we are going to be looking at the book of Ephesians, Paul's letter to the church at Ephesus. So as you get ready for that, just keep in mind it's going to be at 6 tonight. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can watch it at 7 if you want to. That's perfectly all right. It makes no difference whatsoever. That's the beauty of this. So you can catch it when you can, or even Friday morning or Sunday afternoon, whatever. So keep that in mind. Again, keep the list in prayer. Sandy Weeks has been in the hospital. I had mentioned that. She is coming home, hopefully today. They reattached some wires in her pacemaker, and she is, I think, feeling quite a bit better. So keep Sandy in your prayers, and certainly those who have lost loved ones in the recent past. And Alan Wright, I have not heard anything, but I know a while ago he had fallen, and I lifted him up at that point. So I'm going to be pursuing that a little and checking and seeing if I can find out how Alan's doing. But he had hurt his head. So let's keep Alan in our prayers, and just kind of recycle and bring people back up as I'm aware of it. Certainly, as I've mentioned, we've got a number of folks we're praying for who are going through cancer treatments. And so we need to lift them up in prayer as we try to plan on how we're going to get back together again face to face, and when we need prayer. That's what the meeting really is about tonight. So keep us in prayer, and we're going to continue to do the Facebook stuff. I think I don't feel like there's any way I can quit that at this point, and I don't want to. So we will see how that goes as time goes by, but we're gonna keep on plugging and lifting up the Lord. So let's pray, shall we? Almighty God, through the power of your Holy Spirit, you enable us to do and be more than we can think or imagine. Come now, dwell within us, and make us strong to do your work and will. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. Now, as we look at the passage we're going to take a look at today, it is a passage that, if you know me well or have been to any funeral or memorial services I've done, I often use this because this is a passage that I love, and I love what it reminds us of, and what we desperately need to be reminded of on a regular basis. It's from the book of Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, and it is from the 40th chapter, and it is verse 12 through verse 31. It's a long read, but it has a tremendous amount, I think, to offer us. Now, you need to remember that in this case, Isaiah is speaking for God, on behalf of God. God has spoken this into Isaiah. Isaiah is speaking it out to the people. That was the prophet's job. Still is, for that matter, speaking the word of God to the people of God. And so, try and put, instead of hearing Jamie read this, or even instead of thinking Isaiah writing it or reading it or saying it, what I would encourage you to do is sit in a room and imagine that God is speaking to you. And it starts out a little rough. I'm going to be honest with you, it does. If you take it from that perspective. And remember, Israel is being called to account in this prophecy. Oh, sorry. Good heavens. I'm getting enough sleep. It's just, I think part of it is my ear, which is still plugged up. But as I talk, it just messes with my head, and I need to yawn. Anyway, so as we look at this passage, remember, this is God speaking to his people who are messing up and continuing to mess up and refuse to do what's right. And he knows what's coming. Remember that. He knows what's coming, but he also knows what's coming afterwards. And they are going to be chastened harshly, very harshly. But God also looks beyond that to the reestablishment of his people and of his kingdom, and ultimately to a day when, of course, Jesus would come, and all of the relationships would change. And it would go from being this national thing to each person on their own would be in relationship with God. That doesn't mean their own truths are fine and everything's good. We all come under the authority of God, because as we were reminded in the theme of the week, God's strength and our weakness. Okay, so we're going to start with verse 12. Again, imagine God sitting in a room with you saying this to you. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, and marked off the heavens with a span, enclosed the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or as his counselor has instructed him? Whom did he consult for his enlightenment, and who taught him the path of justice? Who taught him knowledge, and showed him the way of understanding? Even the nations, they're like a drop in a bucket, and are accounted as dust on the scales. See, he takes up the isles like fine dust. Lebanon would not provide fuel enough, nor are its animals enough for a burnt offering. All the nations are as nothing before him. They are accounted by him as less than nothing and emptiness. To whom then will you liken God, or what likeness compared with him? An idol? A workman casts it, and a goldsmith overlays it with gold and casts for it silver chains. As a gift one chooses mulberry wood, wood that will not rot, and seeks out a skilled artisan to set up an image that will not topple. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to live in, who brings princes to naught and makes the rulers of the earth as nothing. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown. Scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth when he blows upon them, and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble. To whom then will you compare me? Or who is my equal, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see, who created these? He who brings out their host and numbers them, calling them all by name, because he is great in strength, mighty in power. Not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is disregarded by my God. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not grow faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted, but those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So as we read this, there's a number of things that leap out at us. Always look for repetition. If you're reading a passage and you get a phrase repeated, anything like remotely close to each other, that's probably a phrase you ought to pay attention to. What is the phrase we heard twice in here? It is, have you not known? Have you not heard? He's holding them accountable. That's an accountability phrase. Don't you know? Haven't you heard? Of course they have, from birth. And they have pretended to go along with it. But in reality, it's not so much, And so God is calling them beyond what they know and what they've heard to what they've got going on inside. And so you have this accountability as a nation, but there is definitely a sense in which God is reaching beyond that national connection with Israel to the hearts and minds of people. And and he compares himself and all the things that he's done, and I mean, it's like he's comparing himself and saying, okay, so who compares? In your mind, who is like me? Who is it that is better than me? Who is it that is stronger than me? Who is it who has done more than I have? Who is it that has greater control than I have? Guess what? Ain't nobody, including you. And so, he goes through this whole thing of demonstrating for them the nature of his power and his creation and all the things. I love the part where he, lift up your eyes on high and see. Did you ever look up at the night sky? Did you ever go out in a field in the summertime, put down a blanket and lay on the blanket and watch the sky? In August, they have the meteor showers, and we used to do that at camp. We would go out in the field and we'd throw blankets down in the peak night of the meteor shower. We never saw anywhere near as many as they said we ought to, but okay, so we saw a lot, and it was really cool. We really enjoyed it. I think probably the best time we ever did that was when we were out in Colorado once, visiting our friends, and sitting out on their front porch and kind of leaning back in our chairs and watching the stuff, because we were at the end of Trail 17. There wasn't a lot of light in the sky except for the stars. And you could see every one of them, and you felt like they were, you could almost reach out and touch them. And that's what God's talking about here. At this point in time, there isn't a lot of city light that's destroying your ability to look up and see God's creative power. I think sometimes that's one of the problems, that we get so impressed with the things of humanity that we forget it's God's creative power. We look at a tall skyscraper and say, wow, that's amazing. And we forget to look beyond the skyscraper and go, wow, that's even more amazing. And so God is holding this up. We need this word. This is a word for us. This is a word for me. This is a word for you. We need it. God is bigger than anything else out there. And as the VeggieTales always says, and I've said this before, God is bigger than the boogeyman. God is not only bigger than the things that we're proud of and we rejoice in, God is bigger than the things we're terrified by and find our hopelessness in. And that's what he's saying. And he sort of shifts gears. At first, he's kind of like, look, I'm big. I'm tough. I'm powerful. I'm large and in charge. And if you don't believe it, you're going to find out. And, and there's no two ways about it. It's going to happen. And they do find out. Indeed, they do. And it is not a happy day for them. But God also looks beyond, and he realizes that, what his plan is. And though they are going to go through a time of punishment, this nation is going to go through a time of punishment, he's also going to bring them back and reestablish them in their homeland. And so, this is God's promise to them. So we move our way down through this passage, and God is comparing their weakness and his strength all the way through it. And he's not doing it to say, to them. I don't think God has ever really done that. Maybe when the prophets of Baal are out there trying to get their fire going, and yelling and hollering all day for Baal to come down and show himself and be great, and then Elijah, he soaks on all his wood, soaks it right down and with water, and he says, they're trying to get the other guys are, see if Baal will light your fire. No, not so much. So, it gets soaked down with water, so it would be impossible to burn. And Elijah speaks, and suddenly lightning or fire comes down, and it's consumed, anybody standing near gets consumed with it, I think that might have been God going a little bit, okay? But you gotta kind of love that one. But when he's speaking to his own people here, and he's warning them and he's trying to draw them to himself. And, I don't think there's any of that going on here. But he's just like, guys, I am God and you are not. And what I want to do for you is I want to do the God thing for you. I want to be God for you. I want to demonstrate that to you in love so that you may rejoice in it, So he gets down to the end, and he uses this last bit of it as a promise, and it is one that I have used for years at funeral and memorial services, and I expect to use it until I retire. Of course, I'm not all that far away, I guess. I don't know that, but I'll keep on doing this as long as I can, as long as the Lord calls me to. But it is so powerful, and it's so simple. God says, I don't ever faint. I don't ever get weary. However, even youths will faint and get weary. Young people will fall exhausted. You ever watch a kid fall asleep in their high chair after a day of play? And you watch them and you think, I wish I had that kind of energy. Well, when it's gone, it is gone. And they're sitting there in the chair, and you're watching them, and you know what's going to happen, and you really don't want to interfere. It is too funny to watch. And all of a sudden, they're gone. It's like faceplant, And usually it's a spaghetti. I don't know what it is. Pasta, probably. Eating the pasta, they just, they're done. Anyway, so, even you shall faint, be weary, and the young shall fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord, okay, not depending on their own strength, but depending on God's strength, waiting for the Lord. Those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. So, what God is saying here is you wait on me. Wait for my timing. Wait for me. And I will do work in you, which is what you need done. And that's his promise. Now, as I always say, and if you haven't heard this, I think it's a worthwhile comparison. If you've heard it 100 times and you don't want to hear it again, good. You can shut down and God bless you and have a great day. And we've covered, some stuff in this already, so we're good. But if you haven't, stick around for a minute, because to me, this is just one of the most powerful passages of Scripture in the Bible. I'm a bird watcher. Started watching birds when I was in 5th grade because my sister had a bird watching project. And so the whole family got involved. Well, it became a lifetime thing, God bless Mrs. Lebdell, or Miss Lebdell, sorry. Robbie's 7th grade science teacher, who demanded a bird watching project from everybody. And there are a whole slew of people who never would have noticed much more about birds than that they flew, had it not been for her. So our whole family got into it. Well, my favorite birds are the hawks and the hawks, owls, eagles, the raptors, even vultures. I love turkey vultures. I love watching them fly. They're just so cool. And I remember when eagles came back to New York State. And the first eagle I ever saw was one of a nesting pair down on the Genesee River. And the nest was out of everybody's sight. There was a few people who knew where it was. And they were, I think, threatened with their lives if they told anybody. And so every now and then, though, you'd see the eagle. And it flew a route that I have seen eagles, now that there are more, fly on more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 occasions. And they will fly along a creek, and they'll be up in the airways, and they're looking for fish. They're kind of doing their shopping, up the aisle. And so it was flying up through. And I looked out and I saw it and I thought, what in the world is that? Because you could see this black thing and it just was sailing up the valley, and I was sure it had to be a bird, but it had no head and it had no tail. It was the strangest thing you ever saw. And then I realized it was up against a cloud because it flew out from behind the cloud. And then I could see the white head and the white tail, and I was ecstatic. I was freaking out. I ran screaming and got my dad. We were up on the hill at the horse pasture, our old horse pasture, and he was working on a fence, and a friend and I were jumping off the roof of the horse shed, and there was this eagle. It was cool. And that was my first experience of an eagle, and ever since then, I have seen, I don't know, a lot of eagles over the years, just New York State eagles. I mean, you don't see them every day, you don't see them everywhere, but when you see them, it is an exciting thing, but they're becoming much more common. Well, one of the things that's really cool about eagles, I had a friend who had a pair of bald eagles. Neither one could be released. One had a broken wing and it was never going to be fixed, couldn't be fixed. And the other one had been imprinted on humans and there was no way that they could release it. He had an Institute for Environmental Education. And he also had a license to keep raptors. And so he had this eagle, and I actually got to have the eagle on my arm once and was carrying it. That was a wonderful experience, but one of the things that struck me was, holy smokes, this is a big, heavy bird. And as I was carrying it from his truck to the mew, the place where they put him, it was like, but they don't work to fly, And ever since that day, I have been very conscious of eagles. And one time, I was driving down the road and I saw an eagle flying across the valley. I could see immediately what it was, and it was being chased by crows. It looked like how a red tail will be chased by little blackbirds and stuff. Well, that's what it looked like, only it was crows and an eagle. And it flew all the way across the valley, and the crows finally gave up and went back. And it got to the hill, so there's the flat of the valley, and then the sides come up, And it got over to the side, and it got over a patch of green grass. It was late spring, and you could see the heat waves coming up. And it got into those heat waves, and it started circling, and it circled until it got up to the point where I couldn't have told you what kind of bird it was. I would have assumed it was a bird, but, you're just a speck in the sky. And then it just sort of came out of that circle and just was gone. And in that whole time, all the way across the valley, all the way through the circles, it climbed probably 1,000 feet in the air and disappeared from sight. I watched that bird for probably 3 or 4 minutes at least, maybe 5. And in that whole time, that eagle never once flapped its wings. Not once. And it depended on the air to carry it. And having had one on my arm, I thought how miraculous it is that something that size and that heavy can actually not just fly, but without any effort on its part, without any hard work, they have to know how to hold their wings. And the air will carry them, and the air will lift them, and the air, I feel a little breeze, that's it. Not enough to hold my hand up. The air is sufficient because they know how to depend on it. So it is for you and I. God is sufficient if we will depend on his strength. Those who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles, not on their own effort, but on the work that the air is able to do on their behalf, the work that God is able, willing, and desirous of doing on your behalf. But you have to be willing to set your wings and let the air carry you. That's the trick. Getting connected with that reality. And so I use this at funerals because it's like, you're not going to come out of this on your own. You need God's help. Lean on God. He will lift you up when you don't have the power to do it. But by the same token, it applies to every aspect of our lives. You don't have the power that God has. You may have a lot of power. You may have power and might. You may have all kinds of authority. But you know what? It amounts to nothing when it really boils down to it, in comparison to the power of God. So I'd much rather be weak myself and lean on God's power than assume that my power is sufficient to get me through anything, let alone everything, that confronts me in life. So, next time you see an eagle, watch it for a while. See how hard it works. I mean, they do fly. They do work to fly at times. But for the most part, they're soaring. For the most part, they are not working awfully hard to do the thing that they're famous for. May it be so in your life and in mine, this day and always. Amen. Have a great day. See you tonight at 6. Bye-bye.